All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. We are broadcasting this all over the place. So we are live all over the internet and grateful for everyone who's watching this live, especially for those of you who registered and are here participating live. Definitely appreciate you. And especially for everyone here was early or on time. I like to start on time. My hope is that over the course of the next 1 to 2 hours, you will experience some radical life transformation. Now, that is a lot to, I don't want to say promise, but a lot to say is possible. But I'm going to tell you that what we're talking about today, I have been using for almost 8 years now. Actually, it's been a solid 8 years now. And though it is not as simple as perhaps some would like, it is much more effective than anything else I think I've probably ever coached or trained anyone on. Certainly, one of the most effective things I've used in my own life to gain some significant accomplishment, especially over the things that have dogged me. Um, so with that in mind, I'll introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Thom. I own a little consulting agency called Stronghold Training, and I am not here to sell you anything at all today. What I want to do is simply share with you this system for accomplishing goals that I think you will find helpful. Now, a couple of disclaimers. Disclaimer number one, um, we will be talking about some things that might make your head hurt a little bit. This is going to require you to put your thinking cap on. So if you're trying to like listen to this and gain it by osmosis, that's fine. You'll get a replay of this, but you're definitely going to want to go back with your notepad in hand and look at it a little closer. I'm happy to share the slides with you, but that won't be enough. Reading the bullet points won't be enough. You need to kind of immerse yourself into this today, okay? So that's disclaimer number one. Now, number two, we'll be taking breaks. I mean, like literally, I will shut up, stop talking, give you guys breaks. If you have questions at any point in time, just drop down to the chat too much. So if you could put any questions to me in the Q&A, and then you can interact in the chat. The default, by the way, I don't know if this is a setting that I need to change or whatever. The default in the chat for these Zoom webinars is your message goes to all panelists, which is just me. So you're going to want to make sure to change that to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see what you're saying. The Q&A goes to just me. All right, another disclaimer. This is a system that you're going to master over time. It's not something that you just take and implement and everything's better. As a matter of fact, one of the things we're going to mention is that those easy buttons that are sold to us today are usually not legitimate. There's a little bit of time you need in this. You're going to kind of crawl before you walk and then run. Immediately, you'll get benefits. It's not overwhelming. It actually removes overwhelm, but you'll immediately get benefits. But it just takes some time to master. And the challenge in that is that we have to be disciplined. Now, the program is actually designed to ensure discipline when it's properly used. So all the pieces necessary for success are there. You don't really have to go outside of this. All the pieces are within this process. But you have to be rigorously honest with yourself, strengths and weaknesses, and then simply begin applying it without trying to be a perfectionist. Progress is your goal. And I'm going to tell you that a year, 2 years from today, your life could be radically different if you put these things in place. I can assure you, you're already doing some of it. But the areas where you find yourself falling short, I think this process will potentially shore up what you're missing. So that's enough of an introduction about that. Now let's kind of jump into the introduction of what we're really here to do today. So I've been a coach for many, many years, been training and speaking about goals and all that stuff for a long time. Doesn't mean I know it all, but I've learned definitely what doesn't work. And we live in a day and age where the primary amount of stuff that's digested when it comes to this, like the content, the motivational stuff we're digesting, their themes, their anthems are kind of hustle hard, right? Dream big, hustle hard. And you know what? That type of encouragement at times is very, very helpful, but it doesn't usually help the entrepreneur be successful as much as we might think. As a matter of fact, for the entrepreneur, which I imagine most of you are, dreaming big was never a problem. We're quite brave. We jump in, start a business 100% on our own with no guarantee of victory, risk it all, and jump right in with big ambitions. So dreaming big is not usually our problem. Hustling hard can be. We might like to find short circuits to things, easier paths. The path of least resistance is often the entrepreneur's way. But we usually will apply ourselves to finding the path of least resistance, sometimes 10, 12, 15, 20 hours a day. We'll quickly work weekends, we'll work evenings, we'll jump on a call anytime. Hustling hard is not usually our issue. Consistency, discipline, that might be, but the hustle is not usually our problem. So you can dream big and hustle hard and find yourself overwhelmed and burnt out. Again, stay encouraged, keep yourself mission focused, sure. But we actually want to start to implement a system that forces us to be strategic, that forces us to use our mind, not just our metal, right? A system that kind of helps us in the areas entrepreneurs tend to struggle, like being consistent, tracking and tweaking and doing some of that stuff. And at the same time, that system can't be so overwhelmingly oppressive that we don't have fun anymore. Because if an entrepreneur stops having fun, well, we'll just go do something else. So it's got to be manageable without being overwhelming. And what I'm going to give you today is that framework. And I'm going to help you work within that framework to actually accomplish your goals. And again, you won't master it today. Lord knows I have not mastered it, but it is absolutely the framework I continually use and come back to if I ever fall off, that has always shown me how to be successful. All right, that is a long introduction. One last word of introduction, we'll dive right into the system here. I'm a little bit irritated. Not irritated, it's not the right word. I'm probably just tired of hearing about goal setting. It's helpful to set good goals. We're going to talk about how to set proper goals here today. But here's what I mean by that. I did a Facebook Live earlier today on this. So I don't go to my 9-year-old and hand him the keys to my car and say, your goal is to get 100 miles down the road. That would be foolish and dangerous. Why? Because he hasn't learned how to drive. And we talk about goal setting, and we kind of set these awesome goals, and we just kind of leave people to it. And I don't want to do that with anyone who doesn't know how to execute goals. I mean, if your life is nothing but a series of successful implementations, I mean, certainly failure is a part of that, failure and recovery, but you're just one of those people that when you're given tasks, you overwhelmingly conquer those tasks, then by all means, let's set some better goals and truck on. But for most of us entrepreneurs, the goal is not the issue. So if we just keep setting more and more goals, what we actually end up doing, guys, is overwhelming ourselves. And I've been quite critical of coaches in my industry who continually promote goals and goals and goals, but they don't really get into helping people learn how to accomplish those goals. And they have elements to that, but I find them to be very thin or watered down. And the reason why is because it's easier to just talk about setting goals, and optimism feels good. But on the other end of optimism, if you don't actually have the realism to succeed in those goals, it can be quite depressing, and people start to stop believing in themselves. So I want to spend the bulk of today talking about how to actually execute our goals. We are going to talk about proper goal setting. That's a small, if not the smallest piece of it. I actually want to focus on the hard work. And don't believe people who tell you all this stuff is easy. It's actually not easy. All right. It actually does take using our brains. And when everyone just wants to throw you simple solutions, then I would not trust them, because to actually overcome self and to accomplish big things requires failure, requires emotional intelligence, requires a tenacity within us that's only going to come from a persistence in our execution. And that is not for the weak of heart or mind. So sitting and meditating on why you are or are not succeeding, tracking and tweaking and applying science to what we're doing is where the real victories tend to happen, not just from big dreams and a lot of motivation and a lot of simplicity. So I'm going to be a little countercultural here today, and I'm going to bring us old school. All right. I'm going to go back like 200 years into the logical, rational approaches that are science-based that I think, while might challenge our desire for simplicity, will not challenge your desire for success because they are what it's made of. All right, 10 minutes of Thom rambling. Now let's give you what you came for. I'm going to share my screen here. All right. So we are going to begin with what a true goal looks like. Again, I'm not here to really teach you how to write successful goals, but I'm going to give you a little bit of what that looks like. And where it actually begins is not in the SMART goal part, but where it actually begins is in having right priorities. I've experienced this, and sadly have coached many successful people, far more successful than me, who have experienced this. And when I say successful, I mean mostly financially successful in this case, because they weren't necessarily in life successful. What I mean is, I've coached many people who were able to accomplish a lot of things in the wrong direction, right? And they have that midlife crisis. They wake up one day and they say, oh my gosh, all my life I've been trying to get it all done, and I've forsaken my family. I've forsaken my heart. I wanted to always accomplish I'm off mission, if you will. I've forgotten my core values. And sadly, I've seen this happen with many organizations and with many people. And at one point, it had happened to me. I had a full-time student, full-time father, very successful in sales, earning a six-figure salary, doing very, very well for myself, the best shape of my life. I mean, I had all the worldly boxes checked, and I was quite miserable. And I went to a goal-setting session, and this coach changed my life by saying, list your priorities like we're going to do here. And my priorities, I think, were good, but how my life looked that day were in the exact opposite of it. It was all a means to an end that I was never going to reach. One day I'll do these things. And so we have to start here. So here are the 8 categories of priorities that really your entire life can fall into. I don't think there's any more categories than this. I recently added the 8th category of community. So I want you to actually take a minute. I'm going to pause. I want you to take a minute. I want you to look at these priorities. And if you've done this before, do it again. It never hurts. I want you to rank these in order of what they should be, not what they are today, but if this was your last day on earth, how would you want to be remembered? And rank your priorities. What matters most to you down here? And business obviously is your business. Finances, money, health, faith and spirituality, family, friends, that's your social life, education, and then your community, which would be more social cause. All right. So I'm going to pause a second and let you actually do this. And if you want to share it in the chat, you can, but it's pretty personal. So you want to keep it to yourself. That's fine too. As you go through that, some of you may be like, no problem, right? Some of you may be challenged. And this is not a judgment on you, but it may be a wake-up call for some. For example, there was a day when I wrote down business was my number 1, finance was my number 2, education was my number 3. Now, that wouldn't have been how it should have been, but that was certainly what it looked like. And I went to that coach after that, after crying in the parking lot like a baby, and I went back and said, what should I do? And he said, it's a path of progress, not perfection. He said, one of the things you need to do, he goes, right now in your life, business may just have to be where you spend most of your hours and your focus. He said, but given the time you do have, if family really was one of your top priorities, what would look different? And I never thought that way, because I always thought in absolutes. I always thought in perfect ways, like perfection. Not that I think perfectly, but I would think in terms of perfection. What I meant was, to me, the perfect family would be, we were having vacations 3 times a year, and we're traveling all over the world, and we're spending all this time, and I'm only working 4 hours a day. And, none of that was possible at the time. And so with that in mind, I thought, well, I'll just work until I can make that possible. Where he challenged me, I hope you're grasping this, Where he challenged me was he said, with what you can do right now, family was my number two priority. He said, with family as your number two, if Thom, if it's that important to you, with the time you do have, what would look different? And it got a lot simpler for me. I realized it meant a date night with my wife twice a month, that it meant a vacation once a year that we planned for, that it meant little 3 days excursions maybe every couple of months, that it meant me being home for dinner by 5:30 every night, 4 or 5 nights a week. It meant me doing some less of the education things I was doing and doing more of the family things. And that was right size. That was something I could accomplish right now. And the minute I had that and started planning my life around that, and those things came into view, then work was no longer a means to an end. I was already living my life within their priorities. And it's amazingly motivating. Instead of saying, I'm going to be obsessed, all these books right now are written on obsession. Obsess yourself with success, and then you can have this wonderful life, are a bit of a lie. Instead, why don't you have within what you are able to do your priorities in order today? And if family is one of your top priorities, then why don't you have that in order best you can today, and what that can look like with with the means you have, with the money you have and the time you have, instead of focusing entirely on money, hoping one day family can come into view. Hopefully that makes sense to you, but I find this to be a failing with a lot of people. So, and it's a constant place of conviction for myself. I have to come back and do this over and over again because I tend to focus on work, and maybe you tend to focus on maybe on health. We can actually put health above our other things too. So, and if health is your number one priority, well, then you should be focusing on it. So with that in mind, let's move on. Hopefully that's helpful to you, but you can't really do goal setting until you have this in view, because I'll tell you right now, I've sat in goal setting after goal setting after goal setting session with people, and they dream it's all about big money. And there's nothing wrong with having ambitions for big money. But my point is when I look at that as a coach, I go, what's it going to take? How much sacrifice is it going to take to get to those massive goals of world domination? And we tend to somehow ignorantly think that we're not going to have to sacrifice our other priorities to get there. But if your number one priority is not finance, if it's other things, you can hear my family in the background probably judging and criticizing me for my hypocrisy right now. But if our number one priority is really other things, then wouldn't our obsession be to maintaining those over and above actually accomplishing the lesser priorities? And that's the question you have to answer for yourself. With that in mind, now you're mentally really ready. Your heart is really ready for proper goal setting. So we have to start there. So here's the very basics of actually the writing of the goals. It does matter. I mean, there have been tremendous studies on this. Harvard found that 83% of the US population doesn't even have goals. And many of them have them in mind, but they're unwritten, and it's not the same. And they know this because people that actually write their goals down are 50% more likely to achieve them than those who don't. And the reason why isn't because it's some sort of power that if you write it on paper, the universe responds to it. That's not why. The reason why is because once it's written down, we begin to take the next steps of implementation, which is to strategize and to begin to picture and to maintain that picture of what we're trying to do, which are some of the elements we're going to talk about today. But very few people do this. We do dream, and we do resolve to do things. We do commit to do things, but we very rarely properly plan to do things. So starting by writing them down is where we begin. How do we write them? Well, we write them in the smart way. And if you've been around for goal setting for a minute or two, you've heard this already. That our goals have to be very specific. They have to be actually measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And by the way, that's just a fancy way of saying they need to be scientific. Scientific, right? This is different than a vision. We're going to talk about vision. Vision is important. But our goals are not visions, and let's not make them visions. I have honestly, this probably says something about me and my patience, but I've actually walked out on motivational speakers before when they talk about goals as visions, when they're two separate things, okay, two separate things. Your goal needs to actually be scientific. That might sell a lot of tickets to big motivational speeches and get people really motivated to buy books and programs, but it does very little to help people actually accomplish things. So how a goal doesn't sound. Goal doesn't sound like this. I want to lose weight at least 5 to 10 pounds. Well, that sounds like a goal. It's actually not. That's not scientific. That would never pass in a lab, okay, in a medical environment. We want to heal people like 5 to 10. Like we have to be more precise than that. All right. So how do we write it? I will lose 10 pounds by December 31st. Is it specific? Yeah. Is it actually measurable? Yep. Unfortunately, the scale doesn't lie. 10 pounds is measurable. Is it realistic? Well, it's only July, so it's realistic, right? Or I'm sorry, it's attainable. It is also realistic, and it is time bound. December 31st. We have a end date. That's a very smart goal. All right. So here's a couple of examples. I will weigh 175 pounds by August 16th of this year. That is probably not realistic for me, but 185 would be. I will complete my MBA by December 31st of this year. Well, that's also not for me. It's someone else's. I've borrowed, but I could do it by December 31st of 2022 if I so desired. And I will buy my first home by June of next year. Now, we want to be careful. We want to actually be optimistic when we set these. We don't want to be so realistic that we have limiting belief systems that hinder us. There's a little bit of a balance here. But we don't want to think too much about the obstacles, because that's going to come later. We're actually going to overcome the obstacles later in this process. But we do want to think in the terms of reality, all right? 2.5 pounds per week is considered healthy weight loss for most people. So when you plan your weight loss goals, if you plan somewhere around 2.5 pounds or less a week, then that's going to be much more realistic. If you've not been working out for months and now you decide you're going to work out 6 days a week, that's honestly a little challenging. We might want to say we're going to start working out 2 days a week and work our way up to 6 days a week by a certain date. And that's what I mean by being realistic. By the way, all that does is set you up to actually surpass your goals, which is better. So smaller goals, the better, but not because of obstacles, just because of having some good realistic thinking. So what I want you to do now is just write one for yourself, just in this smart way. I'll go back to that slide. Again, we're not going to spend much time on goal setting here. We're going to get to goal achievement, but I want you to write a goal for yourself, and it might help you to post that in the chat, and we can tell you whether or not it's smart. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, or time-bound. We're talking about goals here, not habits. Okay, we're going to get into habits later, but I want you to talk here about goals. So set an actual goal in mind. Like, I'm going to accomplish something specific and measurable by a certain date. So take a minute, jot down on a piece of paper or type into the chat a goal for yourself. Make sure you've mastered this ability. All right, good. So there's a good example of it. Alejandro put in the chat. I'll make 50K in realtor commissions from now until December 31st, 2020. Perfect, right? It's specific, it's realistic for sure. I mean, even though I don't know your specific plan of getting there, I can tell you that that is a very realistic goal. I mean, it's absolutely realistic and attainable in the world you live in. From now to December 31st, you're giving yourself a solid 6 months. So that's good. So that's a good example. And to be honest with you guys, you don't have to spend a ton of time and just writing these out. Instead, what I would have you really do is look at your priorities and answer this question. Based on the priorities I've just listed, where am I lacking? Where am I not meeting my priorities? and actually begin setting goals there before we start dreaming in the categories we may be actually overemphasizing. Okay, so just keep that in mind as we move on. If you actually want to accomplish these things, you'll find that that is a lot easier to chase than chasing rabbits. All right, so that's the goals. And typically, if we were in a workshop together, I would have you write 5 and share them, and we would let you know if they were smart. If you'd like to email me a list of your SMART goals, I would be happy to do that for you. And my email address is success@strongholdtraining.com, and I'll give that to you before we exit today. Once we've written some goals, we end up kind of getting a little overwhelmed by them, as I said before. And sometimes we go, well, this is a big goal. Maybe it's 4 years off, 5 years off. But there's a lot of little steps to getting there. And we're going to talk about action steps and the little things we do to get there. But sometimes we have things that are called sub goals. Maybe you had a big fitness goal to lose a lot of weight. Well, a sub goal might be to join a new gym by the end of this month, or to pick a new diet program, or to enroll in school. You know, you can talk about having an MBA, but are you going to enroll in school by next month, or contract with a realtor by the end of June? I know there's a lot of people in real estate here. You probably like that one. So sometimes breaking down a sub goal is important. Now, a sub goal is not to make this too complicated, but a sub goal is different than an action step. An action step is an actual one thing you do on your calendar, like making a phone call is an action step. Joining a new gym is actually a sub goal. Why? Well, let's be honest. There's a lot with that. You probably have to shop multiple gyms. You might have to come up with a budget. You might have to think about your workout program. There's a lot going involved with that. So if one of the reasons we never accomplish our goals is because we don't really break them down enough. Now, don't overwhelm yourself with this. Sometimes just if you have a big goal, you can make a few sub goals underneath it. For some of us that helps. For some, it might be too much. Just don't confuse goals and action steps. An action step, again, is that like something that's on your calendar. I can do it at this time. I can't join a gym at this time if there's a lot of steps to joining that gym. So it becomes a sub goal. Hopefully that makes sense. The thing I really want to key in on is the difference between a goal and a habit, right? This is very important. A habit is a regular practice or repeated routine. We all have them. We have the habits of eating, whether healthy or not. We have the habits of sleeping, whether healthy or not. We have habits of working. Some of us have habits of drinking and smoking and lots of other things, right? When we think of habits as the things we tend to think of. But what they are is a regular practice or repeated routine. So for example, a habit would be to work out 3 times this week. How do we make that smart? It's a type of goal. The goal is to develop the habit. So you write it in the same way, and you'll see I have examples of that here. I will work out 3 times a week by the end of this month. That is a habit. We want that habit to be formed, right? That habit will be formed when we don't really need much help to do it anymore. It's a regular practice or repeated routine. You've all heard it said that it takes 30 days to start a habit. It's actually not necessarily true. That came from one particular study that was studying one particular habit that took 30 days to develop. Some habits take upwards of 6 months to develop or to break. I think we've seen that even with people smoking. If you just don't have a cigarette for 30 days, it doesn't mean you're done with them. It can take a long time, sometimes a lifetime. Some of us are challenged to have habits in our life in certain areas. It'll just take forever to maintain. So you know that you've arrived when you don't have to write it down anymore. I mean, let's face it. Do you need to set an alarm clock for you to get yourself your first cup of coffee in the morning? For most of us, it's a habit. You're going to get to that coffee. And if your coffee maker's out, you'll get to the Starbucks. You're going to do what you got to do to get to that cup of coffee. Why? It's a habit. What if the gym was the same way for you? What if making cold calls was the same way for you? What if doing a Facebook Live every day to attract people to your social media outlets was a habit? You did it no matter what. You see the difference. So the goal can be to actually develop those habits. So you have a SMART goal to develop a habit. And here I've just got a few examples for you. So what do you do when you're writing your goals? Well, what I do personally is I write goals. I also write out goal habits, and sometimes I'll include some sub goals in there, just to break them down to a little bit more bite-sized chunks. Like for example, I would never set a goal to buy a second home. I would set that as a goal, but then I would say sub goals of determine where I wanted it to be or develop a budget. I might just set some sub goals from the onset. This is an example. Hopefully that's not too complicated for you. I can tell you, like giving my 9-year-old the keys to my car and telling him to drive 100 miles would be foolish. Spending any more time on how to write proper goals is actually foolish. Instead, let me teach you to drive. So we're going to talk now about how to actually drive. And once you do that, we come back to how to set a proper goal. It's going to be a lot more clear because you're going to know now how to get there. So now you're going to know the type of cars you want to buy. So hopefully that is going to be very helpful. And now with that, we've come to our first break. Okay, so we're 30 minutes in. That was a lot to consider. For those of you who are like, you know what, I need a break. I'm going to go get some coffee, use the bathroom. Go ahead. For the rest of you, just want to sit in and wait. I'll take Q&A or use this time to actually get your priorities in order, rank your priorities, and maybe write a couple smart goals for yourself. Why not use this time that you're here? Write a couple smart goals for yourself. I'm just going to mute myself, and I'll be here for any Q&A that you may have. You might want to know how long the break is. The break's 5 minutes. So we will come back at 5 after the hour, 2:05, 2:06. While we're on the break here, I'm just going to answer some of the stuff coming in. Question already, how do I stay focused? That's a big topic. But focus is more about eliminating distractions than it is by having some slick system or technology. And we already know that, right? We already know that that's the case. And so let me just say this as far as it comes to eliminating distractions. We've got to get real and stop thinking that we're the type of people that can take on new skill sets by osmosis, right? If you just want to sit in the back of a classroom and think you're going to absorb stuff, you're not. Now, I'm not saying, I mean, you could put on something to learn in the background instead of, say, music while you're working. But just like putting on Shakespeare, or not Shakespeare, sorry, putting on a Beethoven in the background isn't going to teach you to play the violin. Putting me on in the background isn't going to teach you to accomplish your goals. And I know that sounds harsh, and but I will just say that when it comes to actual focus, we have to focus with, number one, a goal in view. So how do I stay focused? When I sit down and it's my admin time, I've got time set aside for admin every day. The first thing I do before I start chopping at that tree is I sharpen the axe and I say, what am I going to accomplish in the next 2 hours? And I make a short list of what I'm going to accomplish in that 2 hours. And the first time I started doing this, I never accomplished what I set out to do because I dreamed too big and I had too many things going on at once. And so what happened was I started learning myself a little bit more. And now I might set aside 2 hours, absolute exclusive focus, accomplish those things on that list or that one thing on that list. And I'm pretty accurate at being able to figure that out with my time. And what I've learned is that any distraction can tremendously set me off. So I don't put stuff in the background anymore except music. As a matter of fact, I go into a focus time. I'm in multiple focus blocks of different types of focus throughout the day. I'm actually careful with that. So I won't even go from admin to sales within the same 2 hours. I will spend 2 to 4 hours in one type of time, like admin, and not answer my phone, even if a customer calls, and then take my calls in the afternoon. Sure, that can create some issues when you're on demand all the time. And I'm no different than anyone else in this call. People call me. And I'm not saying I don't allow some distractions, but primarily I found I can miss a call and call people back when I'm actually prepared to hear them. And it allows me to also set realistic expectations. This might be something you say is impossible to do, but I have found that true growth happens when I actually allow myself to leverage my time and my focus in such ways. So it's just what we have to just be willing to do. Does that mean there's a client that couldn't call me and take me out of my admin time? I mean, it happens, right? I mean, let's be real. But a lot of times, if that's really becoming a problem, my phone goes off. My phone goes off. I don't find there's any real emergency that's going to require me to have to be on call 24/7. I'm not a brain surgeon. All right, dive back into now how we actually do this. If you're still listening, if I haven't scared you off by saying, don't listen to me in the background, I usually lose a few people when I say that. They go, well, I'll go back and listen to this later. Well, if that's your intention and it's not on your calendar, it probably won't become a reality. So if you intend to listen to this later, you might as well listen to it now. Or if you intend to listen to this later, go ahead and mark off when you're actually going to do it. And then let's see if you do it. And let's just get real with ourselves. All right. And I'm just being your coach here. It's Coach Thom talking. I'm going to give you some straight talk. I'm not going to beat around the bush and make you feel wonderful. I'm going to make you get successful, right? And in doing so, you'll feel wonderful. So accomplishing, by the way, if you're how you feel about yourself is predicated upon your success. We've got bigger issues. So let's talk about how we actually execute our goals. There you have it. I've simplified it as much as I can. There's the picture. This is actually a diagram that's been built over the course of 8 years. I did not start this, to be fair to those who have influenced me and inspired me over the years. I would say the original person to kind of think through this concept was Dan Sullivan of Strategic Coach. He has the strategy circle. It's very similar. My mentor, Jeff Ruby of Red Rock Leadership, took that and built that into a pyramid model and added some depth to it, which I began implementing early on. And then as I implemented that personally and began coaching people professionally, I have developed this and added elements such as driving forces and true accountability. So it actually looks far different than where the inspirations came from, especially as we begin to unpack each layer. But from a sequence or from a system standpoint, it's very similar to systems that have been trained by some very successful people for about 30, 40 years now. I hope, enhanced it as I've practiced it. It's kind of like medicine, right? I have the formula of the prescription that works, but medicine being a practice, as I've practiced it, I've just found some applications to the entrepreneur to enhance this. What we're going to do is undo this layer one at a time. and the outside layer working ourselves in. And the outside layer, the first outside layer, is driving force or vision. Okay. We begin with a vision, not a goal. Even though I already showed you how to write a proper goal, we actually begin now with a vision. Okay. That starts with our priorities. Our vision has to be rightly balanced. So our priority in this example is health, and you've already made your list of priorities. So what's our vision of health? It's merely a question you ask yourself. And what I like to do is go somewhere like the park or the beach and just sit down and look at my priority and ask myself at the beginning of the year and throughout the year, what would this look like? And it's been a perfect world. In a perfect world, what would it look like if I was in ideal health? And you get a vision such as this. I want to be thin, healthy, and athletic. I see myself as a runner, eating well and feeling good. Again, I borrowed that. I do not see myself as a runner, nor do I plan to ever be a runner unless I'm running from something. So, you have to come up with your own. But that's a vision. You'll see it's quite different than a goal. It's much more like a New Year's resolution. But that's where we start. We take our priorities. So if your number one priority was family, you would say, what's that look like? Well, I want to be a good and caring wife and mother. I see myself being available every evening for my children, sharing life together on a regular basis, creating memories that last. You see, it's a vision, right? In your head, you see a little tape playing, a little movie snippet, like a trailer for a movie playing. You can hear it. She had the perfect family. You see this movie trailer playing. It's a vision that will never perfectly be obtained. It's a destination we never reach. It's a direction, right? It's a direction, not a destination, brought in on the compass of our priorities. That's how it works. So you got to dream a little at the beginning. It's actually kind of nice, right? Instead of saying, what's my goal? And this is helpful because people go, I start putting big accolades. I want to have all these wonderful things, which if you could get them like that would be wonderful. But there's a lot of work and sacrifice that goes into accomplishing goals. So let's make sure our vision aligns with our priorities first. And this is how you do it. I'm going to challenge you here. We're just a little bit more workshop style today, maybe moving slower for you. But if you're playing along at home, which I hope you are, then you may find it very helpful right now. If you're watching the replay, just pause. But I would say take a minute here and just do your best to write out a vision for one of your top priorities. And if you want to put that in the chat, I'm happy to comment on it. But I'm going to pause a minute and give you a second to try to write. And you're going to want more time. Normally you're going to spend 20, 30 minutes really visioning this out. But take a minute, just kind of what your gut says right away, what your heart says right away. Write out a vision statement for one of your priorities. And you can borrow what's written here and just change it if that's helpful. Go ahead. By the way, if at any time you'd like to jump in and ask a question live, I can unmute you. I can allow you to talk and then unmute you. And I'm happy to bring you in so I'm not the only voice here. And especially at the end, we'll have some time for some coaching. You guys who are live here today are a little shy on the chat. That's okay. This is very personal, but I do hope you are playing at home. And if those of you who are watching the recording or on Facebook or wherever I've got this thing broadcasting all over, feel free to put comments in there. You're going to find better to do this stuff with the help of others. So don't be afraid to post your comments in there. It's all right. All right, with that said, let's move on from vision. So once you have a vision, then we come back to the goal, just the second layer of that onion, right? We peel back our vision, which of course is our priority and our direction, otherwise known as a driving force. It's a core value, I believe type statements, or I desire, I'm resolved to. That's your driving force or vision. You could start it with I want, I believe. And then we've got goals, sub-goals, and habits that support that. Now, I have done this with well over 1,000 students by now. That's probably way more than that actually, but that I've really coached through this workshop, and not just have heard me say this stuff, but I've really coached through well over 1,000 people with this. And oftentimes people go, and for every driving force or vision, they end up having a habit or two, or a goal or a sub goal. You don't have to have all that. You know, it might be that your driving force is accomplished with one goal or one habit. It may be a whole bunch of goals and sub goals and habits that are under that. But here's the nice thing. What your goals should be becomes very clear when you have a very solid vision for yourself, especially one that's aligned with your priority. Goal setting is very easy. When I first did this, my mentor said, write 50 goals for yourself. It was the class was on a Tuesday. And he said, write 50 goals for yourself by next Tuesday. People were overwhelmed. How could you come up with 50 goals? That's crazy. But it's actually not. When you sit down and you really have a clear-cut vision, the goals just flow from what it's going to take to accomplish that vision. Now, over time, as you live this out, those goals shrink. At the beginning of the year, I typically have somewhere between 12 and 15 goals for myself. I do this with my family. We end up with about 25. But I really end up with a lot less. Why? Well, I've been doing this for a long time. I've checked off a lot of those goals. I've developed a lot of those habits. And my priorities have become a lot more clear. So I'm not doing as much other stuff. My focus has gotten better. It's taken years, but that's what's happened. And so now 50 goals would just be overwhelming for me. I have no desires whatsoever. But initially, many of us have a lot of that stuff we need to kind of do to get there. So if you're way off course from your vision, you're going to have more goals, and that's okay. It's not some sort of judgment of failure on you. It's a clarification of your direction. So you can see the habits there for this example. I want to be a good, caring wife and mother. I've already read that. Habit is to be home for dinner by 5:30, 5 nights a week. That's habit. Having a date night with my husband twice a month. Now, it's actually not written too smart, because I'd love to know when that was going to begin by to make it a little smarter. Be home for dinner by 5:30 p.m. 5 nights a week, starting when? Starting now? Starting within 30 days? You know, just be mindful of when you're going to have that habit started. Now, it may not be a habit formed, but a habit practiced. Habit formed means I don't even have to write it down anymore. Like, you probably have formed the habit of drinking coffee. Habit in progress, right, would be that I'm working on getting there. And then you see some goals there. 1 week family vacation before August of this year. Join the PTA but before the 31st of this month is what that should read. So you can see how that works then. So this is very systematic, very systematic. You sit down, get your priorities in order, you pick a vision for each priority, at least your top 4. Don't have a huge vision for your 8th priority. If your 8th priority is, say, friends, don't develop this massive social life in your perfect vision, because as you look at those 8 priorities, the closer you get to the top, the more you should be sacrificing for number 1. All right, that's just the way it goes. So if family is your number 1, you're going to sacrifice things below that if that's your top priority. It's the way it goes. So just be mindful of that. Just be mindful of that, and write that vision statement, and then put goals and habits associated with getting there. Very, very sequential. And this takes some time of sitting down with a legal pad usually, or a Word document, and typing it out. And you get a nice little pretty picture for yourself. The next step, if you remember on the onion, is to have some strategy. And this is where things get a little bit more complicated. It's a little bit more complicated here. All right. This is why I don't like goal setting classes that don't talk about implementation. Because this is where most of us need help. As a coach, what I'm typically doing, I don't do one-on-one coaching like I once did. I still run the Pro Coach program at the Pinellas Realtor Organization. So I'm still doing one-on-one coaching with realtors. We have an exclusive program for them. But in my business Stronghold training, I don't do one-on-one coaching as an executive coach anymore. I do coaching for my corporate clients, and people in my private client group are getting coaching in a kind of a group coaching format every week. But I don't necessarily people don't come and pay me $1,000 a month to sit and do one-on-one coaching like I once did. I say all that to say this though. I used to do that a lot. And what I found with all of these very successful individuals I sat with was that very few of them knew how to strategize well. And I learned it just by doing it with other people better than with myself. It was much easier to strategize for others than for myself. But this is the key to really getting to where you need to get. This is the transition from setting good goals and having good visions to actually implementing them. This is the first step most people skip. Have you sat down and really meditated on these goals you've now set? The good news is if you followed the other steps, you have good goals, right? They're prioritized, they've got a good vision, and they're written smart. That's good. But now we actually have to sit and spend some time strategizing. And this is, again, where we have to get smarter. We have to allow ourselves to have our brain hurt a little bit. And you're not just going to buy a CRM that's going to do this for you. So a lot of people use coaches for this reason. Plan to spend an average of 20 minutes per goal. And that's on the light side. That's on the light side. And what are we doing when we're strategizing? Well, we're actually asking questions of ourselves. I typically set the legal pad down for this exercise. I walk to the whiteboard, and because it's going to get messy. It's not going to be as clean as the prior steps. And I usually like to involve other people. For some reason, when I involve someone else, it's like a muse. I just get a lot more creative with their feedback. And again, some sort of large piece of paper, I like to use sticky notes up on the wall for brainstorming is helpful. And we begin asking questions of our goal. Remember, at this point, we've got a priority, we've got a vision, and we've got a goal. And so we can begin asking questions. And here's a list of questions you can ask yourself. I've done the hard work for you. This is all a coach really does, is ask these questions. And of course, they can add advice. I'm more of a consultant than a coach, because I'm going to tell you what I think. So questions you would ask is like, hey, what needs to change for this to happen? Remember, when we're setting our goal, we're optimistic. Now we're actually going to be pessimistic. I actually want you to play devil's advocate with yourself here a little bit. Now that the goal is set and you know it's realistic, now I want you to get in there and go, you've tried that before. You said you were going to do that before. Why is it going to be different this time? It's going to be different this time because I really believe it's going to be different this time. That's foolish optimism. What needs to change? Be like that with yourself when you do this. It's amazing what comes out of that type of thing. Hey, what needs to change for this to happen? Oh man, I've got to make major changes for this to happen. What specifically would those changes be? Yeah, I'm going to have to cancel my Netflix. Let's get real. What challenges am I going to face? I'm not going to want to stop eating ice cream. It's going to be hard. Well, what have you tried in the past? Well, I've tried not buying it. I tried just not having it in the house. Did that work? No. Why didn't it work? The store's close by. Okay. Well, considering this, how should we move forward? What needs to change? And you really need to be rigorously honest with yourself and go through this. And as you do, you're going to find, this is the key I think people miss. So if you were kind of sleeping or daydreaming there, come on back. As you ask yourself these questions, you've successfully completed the strategy step when two things happen. When these two things happen right here in the green, as you can see here. Specific to-dos or action steps become calendarable. Calendarable is a new word. And you find areas for true accountability. Let me give you a live example of how this might work, okay? So let's say I've got that priority is health. My vision is to lose 20 pounds. Or you want to make it business related? Let's make it business related. Let's say my vision is, or my priority is business. My vision is to make $50,000 by the end of the year in real estate commissions. That's my goal. Sorry, my vision is to be a successful realtor with leads coming in regularly with predictable success. And I'm primarily focused 90% of my time of not lead generating, but just focusing on my clients in front of me. So I have a system in place to make that happen. I see myself being very systematic. That's my vision. What's my goal? My goal is to make 50K by the end of the year. And I'm sure there's a lot of other goals that would be associated with a vision like that. So now I come to the strategy step and I say, what needs to change for this to happen? Well, I don't have a system in place for lead generating. Okay. Well, I need to now develop that system. Guess what? That just became a sub goal, right? I want to bring that back to the top. Well, I'm going to need to employ a coach. Maybe you say, okay, I need to search that out. That just became a sub goal. See, we're not even past the step yet. We're kicking it back to sub goal. We're going to run into those sub goals through, right? Well, I need to, if we're going to, let's go back to one of those sub goals. Okay, well, I need to have a system for lead generating. Okay, let's say in that process, you develop a system with Facebook ads, right? I'm going to run a Facebook lead generating ad. That's a goal now. I'm going to have that running by the end of the month. Now I have a very specific sub goal to develop a Facebook lead generating ad by the end of the month. Now let's take that to the question, what needs to change for this to happen? Well, I'm going to have to take some classes on that. What specifically will I need to do? I have to learn how to make that. What challenges will I face? Well, I don't really know how to run Facebook Ads Manager, and I think that's something I need to learn. What have I tried in the past? I've only boosted some ads. I've never really had a strategy for lead gen. So there's even some sub goals maybe coming out of that. You can see this is heavy lifting, guys. This requires deep thinking. And as much as we want a simpler solution than that, I'm here to tell you as your coach, this is what works. But I've given you a program for doing it. So as those sub goals get developed, we run the sub goals through the strategy step. The sub goals run through the strategy step. The habits run through the strategy step. And we keep breaking those sub goals down until we have specific action steps and accountability. Specific action steps and accountability. This is the step where I usually lose people. We're not real good at strategic thinking. We like it to just be real quick, run and do this. All right. And that's where it's hard. So I'm gonna kind of dwell here a little bit. All right. Alejandro said, smooth plug. Yes, I have a private client group that teaches people how to make lead generating ads. Wasn't intentionally a plug. I subconsciously am always plugging my coaching group. But the truth is that, that is a place you can go and learn that, but you may need to learn some of these things, right? And as we develop this, we end up breaking it down till we finally have our goals to a place where we've thought them through, again, answering those questions, where we get to a place where these questions have been answered. And again, hear me on this, guys, specific action steps come out. The difference between a sub goal and an action step, again, is a sub goal is a destination, a specific small destination that we're going to accomplish. The action step goes on the calendar. That's how you know you've gotten there. If I say, learn how to make Facebook ads, that I can't put that on my calendar, right? That would be a sub goal. But when I start asking those questions, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to attend a class. Okay, then an action step becomes find what classes are available on how to make Facebook ads, or hire a marketing person, right? You see that now that, when am I going to find out? This is how minuscule we have to get with this. This is why we don't accomplish things, because we leave it off on, I need to take a class. Maybe we write down, take a class, and then it just sits there. The reason why the vast majority of us don't execute, implement, is right here. We don't go that next level because it's hard work, because it strains us. But we got to stop here again and go, okay, I'm going to take a class. When am I going to take the class? Soon. Wrong. We're not done with the work. When are we going to take the class? Let's see. Well, I'll have to research the class. Okay, when are you going to research the class? Saturday from 9 to 10. Ooh, now we've got an action step. Saturday from 9 to 10, you're going to research the class. All right, now you got to ask the next question. Why wouldn't you do that? Well, usually I sleep in on Saturday mornings. Sounds like you need some accountability there. So what are you going to do to make sure you actually do what you intended to do on your calendar? Well, I got a friend who wants to take the class too. Maybe I'll meet them for coffee and we'll do it together. Okay, when are you going to call that friend? I'm going to do that today. Action step on the calendar. You see how I've learned by coaching people how to whittle it down to that level? You need to learn the same thing. You need to learn how to do the same thing. Don't stop once you have the solution in mind. Take the solution through this filter till it gets whittled down to the very specific action step that ends up on your calendar. And once you've done this with all your goals for the year, quite a process. You end up with a calendar full of many little action steps that, if we've done it sufficiently, actually supports all of our goals. And it begins looking like this. Pretty awesome, right? Pretty awesome. The first place most of us fail, we don't write down the goals, or we don't align our goals with our vision and our priorities. Second place most of us fail, we don't spend enough time in strategy. We just come up with the quick sub-goal solution, the first step, if you will, and we leave it there. It becomes good intentions, and good intentions rarely become good fruit. When we take the time to actually whittle this down and it ends up on our calendar, we're much more likely to execute. All right? But we're not done yet. We're not done yet, because you need to do that with everything. And that's going to take a lot of time and admin and planning. We have to sharpen the axe before we chop the tree. I don't remember the exact Abraham Lincoln quote, but you know what he said, something like, I'd rather spend hours sharpening the axe, so I only have to spend an hour cutting the tree instead of spending all day cutting the tree, or something much more eloquent than that, he said. Well, it's just a very true principle in life. Then we get to accountability, which is key, because maybe some of you are saying, Thom, I've done all that. I mean, my calendar looks like that, but I'm just blasting by all my daily workouts. It says work out every day. It says make sales calls. I mean, I've done all that, Thom, and I'm just not doing this crap. Well, what's my problem? Well, on some of those things, we're probably going to need some accountability. So part of your strategy step is asking that question. Why wouldn't I do this? What's going to throw myself off the beam? Have I said I was going to do this before and I didn't end up doing it? We've got a good strategy here. What's going to keep me from implementing? You start asking that question, and we will solve the question of accountability after our next break. So it is 2:31 here on the Eastern Seaboard. We are going to come back at 2:35. 2:35. See you in a minute. All right. As I'm sure you guys do, I do miss being together in person. I typically will run this as a 6 hour workshop. We'll actually go through all of this together. I do that at the beginning of the year and sometimes halfway through the year. We'll have a goal reset where I will spend 6 hours with people in an all day class, lunch provided, long breaks to go through and actually do this together. For those of you who are just kind of watching this, I know it's kind of lecture heavy. If you have any Q&A or you'd like me to just let you share and talk, I'm happy to do that to keep it from being so lecture intensive. But if you're listening to this in the background or you're planning on coming back to this, then just do me a favor. I really want to see you succeed. Go ahead and mark an hour or two off your calendar, or maybe 3 or 4 hours on your calendar to go through this as a process where you'll pause me when you get the replay and go through it. Now, if you intend on doing that, but the chances are you won't do it, then try to jump in and pay attention today and get out of it what you can and get a good start on this. Um, it is life-changing to use this system. It is absolutely life-changing. And so it is worth the time. If you just find yourself year after year after year trying new things, just scattered, throwing new stuff against the wall, maybe you got some good stuff going, but you just feel that way, um, you know, you've been buying programs hoping they'll fix you and the program didn't do that. Well, guess what? Got good news. You're probably just an entrepreneur. And we all struggle from that. But this type of system is exactly what tends to make the difference, at least in the clients I've worked with for years. So spend the time to kind of learn how to immerse yourself into it. All right, so now we're going to talk about accountability. The dictionary, which I believe is Webster's dictionary, last I checked, it's the American dictionary, defines accountability as an obligation or willingness to accept responsibility or to account for one's actions. It's pretty good. You got to take accountability for that. Be accountable. Right? Take responsibility. So I have brought my own definition. This is Thom's definition, and I call it true accountability, which is an intentional means to ensure you never fail to take responsibility to perform an obligation. Well, that's fancy. Just wanted to sound like Webster. What's that mean in layman's terms? Oh, well, what that means is that true accountability is such a powerful accountability that we can't get ourselves out of it even if we wanted to. A simpler way of illustrating that would be to say it's like arresting ourselves. Imagine if, remember the last time you had that real motivational moment about, say, your health goals? You're like, it's going to be really different this time. I can't wait to work out come Monday. Remember the last time you had that? Like you felt like you would have done anything to get it done. And you look back like, man, why didn't that feeling last? Well, because emotions are fleeting. What if in that moment when you had all that motivation, you would have taken a pair of handcuffs and handcuffed yourself to the treadmill and thrown away the key? You're like, that's crazy. But that's true. That's a picture of true accountability. That's exactly what it looks like when we do it well. And so my challenge to you is, as you go through this goal setting and you may get yourself pretty motivated, especially as you do that vision and that strategy, you're going to get really motivated. You're going to be like, man, I'm getting all these steps on my calendar. It's really looking like this is going to become a reality this time. I think it is going to be different this time. Ask yourself where it won't. Get pessimistic on yourself. And then let's get out the handcuffs and let's handcuff ourselves and throw away the key. Well, how's that work practically? That sounds nice. How's that work practically? Here's some examples of true accountability I've collected over the years. One is hiring a personal trainer. And I'm not your health coach, right? It's something we can all identify with. We're going to talk specifically about some real estate, some business things here in a second. But an example of this is to hire a personal trainer. I had researched fitness for many, many years. I've got the books here on my shelf. I've just got tons of them. I really became intellectually probably quite a potential fitness coach at one time. I really knew the programs and what worked and had followed people and stuff like that. But every time I went to do it myself, I never got beyond 30 days before kind of giving up. I knew what my problem was. Well, I knew it was an accountability issue. And so I just sat down one day and I said, what would it be worth? How big of a check would I write to be 6 months from now still working out? And I did some math and I said, I would spend somewhere around $3,000 or $4,000 for that, right? So I started looking for personal trainers within a budget of $3,000 over 6 months. And I found a guy who for $350 a month met me at the gym 4 days a week. And he didn't really tell me a lot of stuff I didn't know. He helped me a lot with form. He could see what I couldn't see laying on the bench. But what he did for me is he got me to the gym. As sad as it is, he got me there because I wasn't going to pay someone $350 a month and not show up. Actually, there were quite a few times he didn't show up. But I showed up. And 6 months later, I didn't have the physique I always dreamed of, but I had a habit. I had a habit and I didn't need his services anymore. It was helpful, but I actually woke up every day and wanted to be at the gym more than I wanted anything else. And I continued to go to the gym for a long time. And fortunately, you can't judge me based on this video to see how much I've continued doing that. But the truth is the habit was developed. I needed it. I needed the gym. That was worth every cent. But until I had that personal trainer, I wasn't able to do it until I got honest with myself. And $350, by the way, especially at that time, was quite a sacrifice for me. Today, I have a gym in my garage. I made that investment because I found that even traveling to the gym became a hindrance, right? So here's another example, turning off your phone when working. One of the hardest things for people to do is to turn off that smartphone. But for some of us, that's exactly what we need. Now, there's no perfect accountability, right? You do that, oh, people can't call. What if you miss the business goal of a lifetime? Well, what if you check your phone 5 times a day? We got to get rigorously honest with ourselves, right? We got to cut off the hand. We got to handcuff ourselves. So that's a good one. Deleting social media apps from your phone and then having your spouse lock down your app store. This is my favorite one. I do not have an app store on my phone. Don't have an app store. I don't know the code. I can go in there and if I go to unlock the app store so I can download apps, I don't know the code. My wife does. And I'm not embarrassed or ashamed to tell you that at all. Here's why. I'm a social media junkie. I will spend all day checking notifications. It's the easiest thing when I'm feeling stressed to run to my Facebook app. I don't have a Facebook app on my phone. I don't have an Instagram app. I have Facebook Pages app because I use it for business, but there's no news feed on that. I can go on my computer and scroll the news feed, sure, but it's not the same as having it in my pocket all the time. And to keep me from actually going and downloading the store, I've locked it down. And my browser, by the way, is terrible. I can't watch live video or anything on my browser when it comes to the Facebook app is much better. So that's been what I've had to do. And by the way, you know that you get that little notification. If you have an iPhone, you get that little notification every week of how much time you spend on social media apps. Guess what it is for me every week? Zero. Since I did that, where it used to be like 8 hours a week or more. And it's quite a sobering thing when you see when you get that report every week. And if you don't know how to get that report, you can go into your phone. It's been tracking how much time you spend where. All right. Internet filters is another one. A lot of us spend time looking at things you probably shouldn't. So internet filters is helpful. You can actually block things. Here's one of my favorites. And this my mentor did. So he just always intended to go for a jog and he just never did it. So what he did was he would drive he lives in West Chase and his house was 2 miles from the Starbucks in West Chase. So he would drive his car home and park there at the Starbucks, go into the Starbucks, get a cup of coffee, finish his work for the day. Nice, relaxing way to finish his work. He'd go into the bathroom there, change into his running shoes, running clothes, put his stuff in his car, and he would run home. Now, the accountability was his wife was not allowed to open the door for him unless if he pulled his car into the driveway. He would have to run back and get it. Now his wife was an excellent accountability partner and would do this. My wife would probably not answer the door. She wasn't mean. She was just really took his accountability seriously. His life was in jeopardy. He had a bad doctor's report. And so he started running home. Now, the nice thing, what's in it for her? Well, what was in it for her is that after dinner, they would drive together up to the Starbucks and have a little coffee together or treat together at the Starbucks, kind of like a little nice date night. And he'd pick up his car and drive home. So he was doing this 3 or 4 times a week. And he ended up losing 20 pounds and winning a weight loss competition with some of his clients. So, really was effective accountability. You can see how we can get creative. One of my favorite methods of true accountability is called Parkinson's principle. Not Parkinson's like the disease, but its name has the same name. Parkinson's principle is we will maximize any limitations we give ourselves, especially entrepreneurs. So for example, if you have 5 minutes to study for the test, you make the best of those 5 minutes. Procrastination when rightly used, follows Parkinson's principle. Many of you need to stop feeling bad about your procrastination. You're actually leveraging Parkinson's principle and it works. You know you only need an hour to prepare. And so you give yourself that last hour and you do well. That's actually good. Stop faulting yourself for that. You're just probably not a planner. That's okay. Parkinson's principle can be applied to dieting. It's called the small plate. You know, it's just throw out all your plates and just use really, really small plates. You'll maximize that plate over time until it becomes effective, but you just can't fill that plate more than that amount of food. Parkinson's principle works. It's actually the principle behind the very famous book, Profit First. Profit First. It uses Parkinson's principle and it's revolutionized many entrepreneurs' businesses. If you haven't checked it out, go check out Profit First, or just watch the YouTube videos on it. Very, very helpful. Same principle applies. It's using true accountability, guys. Planned accountability meetings with trusted accountability partners is a great way. Here's one of my favorites for those of you who are having money problems. Automatic deductions from your checking account to a savings account you can't access without another person. One of the best accountability partners out there is your bank. If you go to your bank and you say, hey, I don't want to touch any money but this amount, small plate. You just give me $1,000 a week. I'm going to learn to live on that. You just give me $1,000 a week. Even if I put $20,000 in there, I just want $1,000 a week. You just put the rest in a money market over here that I can't touch without another person. I need 2 keys to the safety deposit box. There's banks that will do that for you. There's actually apps that'll do that for you. There are apps you can put on your phone that every time you spend $1 and change, it rounds up the change to the next dollar and deposits that into these little mini micro deposits. I did that for a couple of months, ended up with $200 in there. I had forgotten about it. That's true accountability. So you see, you come up with that stuff while you're being honest through your strategic planning. All right. Let's pause a minute, take a breath, take a drink. Here's the good news. I just gave you the fire hose treatment of this system. Let me encourage you real quick. Following this system means you don't have to keep all your goals bouncing around in your head anymore. You're free. I got to encourage you with this because you may be listening to this going, man, that's a lot of planning, a lot of execution, a lot of writing. Oh my gosh, that's so hard. You know what? It's actually easier than what you're doing right now. Because if you're running around right now and you got all these goals in your head and you're trying to think when you're going to do it and all these good intentions and you're never doing it, you're actually carrying too much weight. I'm telling you, set down the weight, plan out the building, and then carry 1 brick at a time. When you have successfully done this, your calendar is filled with many action steps for every goal you want. This means you'll actually accomplish more because most of us can only focus, if we're carrying all the weight ourselves, we can only focus on like 3 goals at a time. And you can do that, by the way. You can just say, I'm just going to do 1 thing at a time. That works. You just only can unfortunately do 1 thing at a time. So with this, you can actually accomplish all your goals with the ease of only living 1 day at a time. Basically, all you have to do every day is wake up and just do those action steps. You've already done all of the planning. You don't have a million sub goals that one day you're going to get to. You've already run them through the process. Your entire calendar from now until whenever is filled with mini action steps. Guys, you only have to wake up. Most of the time, your action steps are never more than 3 a day. So here's what I'm trying to say. You don't have to have all of your goals in your head anymore or on your shoulders carrying that weight. All you have to do, your action steps for the day. That's all you got to do. Now, with that said, I've been doing the system a long time. You need to sit down with yourself once a month. I have breakfast with myself once a month. I call it the breakfast with myself planning meeting, where I sit down and I pull out my goals. I run through them again, my priorities, my vision, my goal. I run through where I'm at with it, look at my tracking of it, look at my strategy, see if I've learned anything new, look at my action steps. And if I'm falling short somewhere every month, I go back in and don't reset my goal, but I go back to my strategy and I add new action steps or greater accountability. So I never get a month away. My failure is good. Failure just teaches me that I need to get more accountability or I need to have better action steps. That's all it does. So failure is good. And I never get away more than a month away from implementing that. And when you live that way, I don't run around going, oh, when am I going to get around to doing this thing I intend to do? And years go by and you have that midlife crisis. No, I just do my action steps every day. I'm fine. I've already spent the weeks of planning. Now, for me, at the beginning of the year, when I first did this, I would sit down and spend a couple of days running my goals through this process. Is turn off everything and just plan for a couple of days, get it all mapped out. And then all I have to focus on is executing my action steps every day. Instead of just having a goal and putting everything aside and being distracted by my goals, I actually planned out the whole mission and then began executing, a lot like great businesses do. And through that process, as I accomplished some of those things, I had a lot less to do. And then finally, I'll say this, over the years, I have found that I don't bite off as much anymore. I have a lot less I'm trying to do. I'm much more focused on my priorities instead of just big accomplishments. And my action steps are more like 3 to 5 a week on these things instead of 3 to 5 a day. That said, I never do more than 3 things a day on my action steps. Now, I do a lot of stuff during the day. I take a lot more action steps than that. But when it comes to my goals and through this process, about 3 a day. And most of the habits have been formed. And some I'm still working on, right? Here's the beauty. Failure is simply information. Every time I fail, all I'm doing is learning these are the things I need. It's usually, for me, greater accountability or wiser strategy. And I never get more than a month without having those lessons learned. And so I'm just continually improving, and that's okay. A failure is actually a learning opportunity, and that is all it is. As long as I implement it into making tomorrow better, it's not a bad thing. If I don't, then those failures are critical. All right, so that's all good news. So now you have to do the hard work of actually sitting down and trying to do this and recognizing you're not going to do it perfectly, but you actually have to spend a few hours grabbing some of those things we've talked about, some of those goals, and going back through it. I'm just going to bring you back to this. Here you have it. You just start off with, all right, what's my vision? And we do that by looking at our priorities. I want to have a vision for that priority. That's going to flow into goals, sub-goals, and habits. And as I have those goals and sub-goals and habits defined smartly, using the SMART method, then that flows into the strategic plan. That's where I'm going to spend a lot of time, one at a time, asking a bunch of questions about each of those goals, sub-goals, and habits. And from that, probably get a lot more goals, sub-goals, and habits defined. And slowly but surely, I'm going to get some planned to-dos, otherwise known as action steps, that are going to end up on a calendar, no more than 3 a day. And then I'm going to be rigorously honest with myself and say, where do I need that accountability? And I'm going to attempt to handcuff myself so I can't even get out of it where possible. And as I do that, once a month, I sit down and see how well I'm doing. And when I find failure, I go back to my plan, not my goal. Although at first you may need to adjust some of your goals because it may be sobering for you. But over time, you're going to stop doing that. You're just going to go back to your plan and you're going to say, all right, let me adjust my action steps for the next month. Let me add some accountability and I'm going to keep on trucking. And this is how you make a very successful entrepreneur out of yourself. And that requires a lot of work, right? It's very scientific, testing, adjusting, modifying, and keeping on trucking, right? And that's probably more than a lot of you wanted to hear. But if you start applying this very systematic method, I mean, I've just got so many clients that will tell you this works. And a lot of them have needed some help with it. But it's a lot of it because they just couldn't sit down for 2 hours and process what I gave them, right? And you may be you may feel challenged on that too right now. So go back on this recording and break out 30 minutes a day. Spend some time on one step at a time. But guys, don't waste another year scattered, right? This is not a perfect system, meaning that this doesn't take all the work out of it for you. It requires some work. Now I'm going to give you, in just the last few minutes here, I'm going to give you what I call the predictable success for dummies method. So if you weren't paying attention until this moment, let me wake you up real quick. Just watch this. You're in real estate. You're an entrepreneur. You're a salesperson. You're a small business owner, whatever. And you go, I don't got time for all that goal setting. I'll do that in 2021. This is what you need to do right now. This is what you need to do right now. It's using the same methodology, the same framework, but I'm going to call it just a simplified version. Here you go. Okay. Every Monday morning, here are the questions you're going to ask yourself. Number 1, what am I going to do this week? What am I going to do this week? Very simple. Next, how am I going to do those things? How am I going to do those things? So if my thing this week is I'm going to make calls, how am I going to make those calls? Well, from a telephone. Yeah, but what am I going to say? What's my strategy? What voicemails am I going to leave? Spend some time. It's a strategy step. What is the goal? How is the strategy? Next, how many of those things am I going to do? That's your action steps, right? I'm going to make 30 calls over 2 hours, right? You see how we get specific. And then last, when am I going to do them? That's the calendaring. As you guys can see, SMART goals just became SMART strategy. And here I brought it back together, SMART action. What am I going to do? I'm going to make calls this week to grow my business. How am I going to do it? I've got a strategy. This is what I'm going to say on the calls. This is what I'm going to do. How many of those am I going to make? I'm going to make 30 of those. When? Friday between 2 and 4. At least do that, guys. I've coached too many people that have told me they had good intentions, and I see them in the next class and I go, hey, how'd that thing turn out? Oh, yeah. No, I did something else. How much more business are you getting? Not, but I'm on this new thing now. And that's chasing the shiny object syndrome, which entrepreneurs are very prone to. That's why people like to sell to entrepreneurs, because we're easy targets for shiny new objects. It's because of our strengths of being creative and being innovative, right? But it doesn't help when it comes to this. So at least get this, guys. At least get this. What's that look like in a spreadsheet? I'm glad you asked. This is kind of what it looks like in a spreadsheet. You can see here on the right-hand side, I've got an optimized sales path. This is your sales process. It may start with an introduction followed by a consultation. People make offers. Your buyers make offers. Your sellers make offers. You go under contract and then you sell something. You see, I've put that into a goal form here. If I wanted to close if I wanted to make $330,000 in commissions, that would be 40 transactions throughout the year at my average commission, which would mean I'd need 45 contracts to do that, because 5 are potentially going to fall through, which would mean I'd probably put in 80 offers, because about every other offer may be accepted. Then that means I have to sit down with about 50 individuals in a consultation, because 10 might not actually move forward with me, which means I probably need to have 75 initial 15 to 20 minute conversations with potential buyers and sellers. That's just based on traditional conversion metrics from my clients, right? So that's just an example. Well, if we were to divide those all by 12 and look at it on a monthly point of view, that would be nothing more than 3 transactions a month, which would be about 4 contracts, 7 offers, 4 consultations, and 6 introductions. Well, 4 consultations a month is only 1 a week. It's very manageable. So now that we have the goals and the numbers behind it, now we go, well, how do we get to those 4 consultations a month? Well, we're going to do that by a series of direct prospecting, indirect prospecting, and indirect marketing. Direct prospecting would be things like calling people and asking for referrals. And we come up with a metric, make about 1 of those calls a week. Follow-up calls from open houses and things like that, about 20 a month, about 5 a week. Door knocks, in and around our open houses, that ends up being about 40 when we're only doing a couple open houses a month. Maybe we do some FSBO and expired calls too. You don't have to do all these things, but these are just examples of types of direct prospecting. Then we got indirect prospecting. That's things like strategic partnerships like attorneys and CPAs, open houses, networking events, and pitch sessions. And we can just come up with how much of that we want to do. Now, ideally, you wouldn't be doing 8 pillars, but you would be doing about 4, and just more of those things, the ones that you like to do and the ones that you do really well. But you see what I have here? What I'm going to do, how much of it I'm going to do. On your calendar is when you're going to do it, right? And then how you're going to do it's just your strategy behind each of these things. You develop these things out, you start to get a very predictable success program. And then of course you've got the marketing stuff like direct mail, social media ads, email blasts, and blogs. Those are just examples. And the goal here is we throw this on paper. At first, it's just kind of guesswork. But over time, as we track these things to see if we're actually doing them, and then we tweak them based on the results we get, you start to develop a formula. And I call it the predictable success formula. And basically, it just comes down to this. If I do these things, I get these things, meaning the number of consultations. And I start to learn that if I get a certain number of consultations and I track my conversions, I start to find out, based on the number of consultations I have, this is how much money I make. Very, very simple business plan. It is entrepreneur proof. It's not that, it doesn't have to be put into a thick book of how to build your real estate business or how to build your small business. It's really quite simple. And it's the same program I use with all my clients because it's just so simple. It's the same thing I use for my own business. And the goal is not to do, again, 12 things, but to do about 4 things really well. And then to track and tweak. Just like the same strategy we just had for our whole life, this would be microing it down to our business. So a few of you, if you've stuck with me this long, said, how does this apply to real estate and my business? Same framework right here. Same framework right here. Very, very simple, right? But it requires sitting down, looking at it every month, tracking what you're doing, having some strategy. So it starts with the goal on the right here, how much you're going to make, right? That moves into the sub goals. It ends up with applying some strategy of how we're going to get there, which ends up being action steps of little things we do, like making 30 calls, which of course ends up on your calendar, as well as going back and tracking and tweaking those things. Really not that hard, but you got to take the time every week to sit down and be your own sales manager, be your own business manager, work on the business, not just jumping in there and suddenly spontaneously doing some of this stuff and expecting it's going to have a predictable result. And you don't need to spend money on a coach at all. Just do this yourself. All a coach does is kind of hold your feet to the fire on this. And again, I'm not here to sell you coaching services. I'm just here to show you what I do with people I've coached that's worked. All right. That's the thing. Yes, I do this for people in my private client group, strongholdtraining.com/PCG, but I'm honestly not here to sell that to you. I really am here to give you the formula. And I believe you are capable of doing this. But if a month from now, you have not even sat down and started this and you thought this is what you needed, we just need some accountability. Okay. And so come back to it. It's never too late to start. There's no shame in starting over. That's just taking information and applying it. I need to start over. That's not a failure. It's a good failure. It's a fail forward. And we come back and implement it. All right. That's the bulk of the content. With what I have, the time I have remaining, we've got 30 minutes here. Okay. We don't have to use it. We can end early. But given the fact that we didn't have much interaction today, it was more lecture, 90-minute lecture. If you want some coaching, now is your chance. Now is your chance, guys. So I will sit here right now for a few minutes. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to unmute you. I am happy to answer from the Q&A if you want to type in a question, but I'm just going to sit here quiet and pretty for a few minutes. And if you have any questions at all about how to grow your business, any questions about lead gen, marketing, real estate, small business, anything at all, you just want to pick my brain, whether it's goal related or not, happy to give you what I know. So I'm just going to, again, shut up, get my breath back, and see if there's any questions. All right, question in here now. If I'm new to marketing, where would you suggest I start? Excellent question. I'm going to answer that here. So if you're new to marketing, and this person asking is specific to real estate, what I would do to start is ask yourself this question. What are your natural gifts? What are your natural gifts, right? So are you a people person? Are you more of an analytical data type person? Like, did you get great scores in accounting, but you're not really good at networking? So ask yourself those questions. What are your natural behavioral gifts? Okay. Do you like social media? Can you spend hours online marketing? Are you a good graphic artist? Are you great on video? Ask yourself these things. And even though you're challenged, doesn't mean you can't do them, but look at what you're naturally good at first, okay? That's going to determine what you do initially, right? We're going to leverage your strengths initially. So let's say you are good at meeting people. You said that. I used to be an accountant. I hate social media. I love people. Thank you. That's going to help me answer your question. So if you love people, then I want to get you in front of as many people as possible. Okay, so your marketing effort is going to be heavily slanted towards that. Now, unfortunately, we can't all grow our businesses doing all the things we love. Sometimes we got to do the things we don't like doing, like maybe making some cold calls every once in a while. But the majority of growing your business, I want to be doing the things that you can consistently do because doing them fuels you. Okay, so I'm going to get you out networking. Now, before you run out and sign up for all your local BNI and chamber lunches and all that stuff, let me caution you. That's what you're going to do. Next, how you're going to do it. We need to get strategic. And I have just sat with so many realtors and so many entrepreneurs who just go to networking and they think if they hang out there long enough and they have clever little taglines that eventually people are going to refer them because there's people in the group getting referred. Um, are most of the people in the group getting referrals? No, because most of them aren't following a system. They're just having lunch with their friends every single week and they do refer to their friends. But we don't need to go to a lunch every single week to get new friends. What we need to do is have a system. So if you go to my website, strongholdtraining.com/networking, I think it's also on the front page, strongholdtraining.com. I have a little thing there called I'll put this in the chat, called the Strategic Guide to Networking, or something like that. The networking guide. I'll type that in here. I always remember the URLs and never the title. I suggest you go and download that little thingy. What I suggest you do is you use a system for networking that is successful. And in that is it's a 2-page little step-by-step guide on how to have that system. And so I would suggest you start doing networking. I would suggest that you follow up with a lot of phone calls with people. I would suggest that you throw and host events. And COVID is not helping any of these strategies for you, nor for me, I'm also very people-oriented. COVID is not helping us. I recognize that challenge. But here's the big thing I want you to take away from this. Who am I going to meet at that networking? Primarily who I want you to meet in real estate, for you realtors, strategic partners. I don't need you going out there and just meeting a bunch of people who know you're a realtor and like you. Okay? That's great. What I need you asking for at those networking groups are strategic partners. What's a strategic partner? It's like an attorney, right? Because the truth is you only need about 4 or 5 attorneys, like family law attorneys and people like that, who really know, like, and trust you and rely on you to have a very successful real estate business. It's really just that simple. If you have 4 or 5 attorneys that are doing a lot of business themselves and they're pretty much exclusively working with you and referring to you, you're going to get 2 to 4 transactions a month. But it takes time to develop those relationships. So stop going to networking and meeting all of the MLM people and that are just going to become your buddy and see them every week and hope that every once in a while you get a referral from them. That's going to happen vicariously anyway. But start asking them what attorneys they know and ask if they'll make a personal introduction to those people, and then show up at those attorneys' offices with something that they need, like a referral for them, or a process of how you work with them, or a great resume of how you've helped, and see if you can start establishing those relationships. That is what I would do, since you're great with people. And I would get real comfortable on the phone. And then next, historically, what's been best with people-oriented people? Open houses. I do a training at Pro twice a year on a successful open houses. I believe I have one coming up in just a couple of weeks. I would definitely sign up for that. It's a kind of a radical view of how open houses work. I actually have a recording of it on my YouTube channel. So if you search Stronghold Training on YouTube, go find my successful open houses process. Open houses, when done strategically, are historically one of the greatest ways to generate leads. And you don't need to have your own listings. You can get listings from other people to do that on. So I would push you towards open houses, strategic partnerships, networking, all in a systematic way. And again, download the things I've given you, and I think you'll get a lot of help on that. All right. Any other questions coming in here? I'll give you guys a few minutes as I go through some of these. You guys gave me some great comments. Appreciate all the positive feedback. Let's see. How much time should I be devoted? I'll go to my other list here. Some of these questions that were sent in through the other channels. How much time should I be devoted a week on lead generating? I don't have a general rule for that. It's really just going to kind of depend. What I need you to do is that strategic method. Maybe use that spreadsheet. If you need a copy of that spreadsheet, I'm happy to send it to you. Just email me at success@strongholdtraining.com. I'll put that here in the chat, although this person can't see that. What I would do is spend a lot of time on that strategic thing there, and determine what your strategy is going to be. Get the numbers right first. Okay. Get the formula down right first. And if you don't know the formula, then we're going to have to take some guesswork. Okay. But figure out what your plan's going to be, put that on a calendar, and that'll kind of dictate your time. And then go out and try it, find out if you were right. It's the scientific method, right? Trial and error. Go out and try it and find out if you needed more time or less time. So the answer to how much time you should be spending on prospecting is dependent on what your numbers, your formula says the amount of prospecting you need to have is. That's actually the correct answer. I wouldn't even trust a coach that said spend X number of hours a day. I will say this: if you needed some sort of blanket information to go on to start, an hour a day of absolute dedicated lead generating, no matter what, minimum, always an hour a day. And that is going to equate to about 5 to 20 phone calls, or 5 to 20 emails, or one open house, or some referral calls, whatever. You fill in that dedicated business building time. By the way, watching videos like this is not business building time. Okay, this is education time. So that's the next thing I would say. Let me look at these questions. We're almost done, guys. If you get a question, get it in now, because I'm going to end early if you don't. How do I build? I think what you're trying to ask is, how do I build a successful ads campaign? Hold on, typing. Yes, okay. Yeah, that's a big question. Again, I hate to self-promote here, but go check out my YouTube channel. I've got a 13-minute video on how to make a Facebook ads campaign. I've got another one I just made on how to make a Facebook lead gen campaign. It's a little bit longer. But I've got, right on my YouTube channel, I've got some really short, quick tutorials on that are, some of them are even real estate specific. And so I would look at those. I will soft sell here. I will sell my private client group. I will put the URL for that in here, strongholdtraining.com/PCG, where that's what we do the whole time, is develop that predictable success plan, and then teach you how to do the Facebook marketing and all that stuff. And then I help you build those ads, and all that's in the private client group. I would suggest is a great program. But definitely check out Pro Coach. So Pinellas Realtor PinellasRealtor.org it's procoach.pinellasrealtor.org. We've got an exclusive coaching program for you there. It may be helpful. Those are things I would check out. You don't have to get this information from me, but I know that's not really what you're looking for. So let me give you a little bit quick and dirty on that. The best thing for real estate right now is running Facebook campaigns that are lead campaigns, meaning you actually run a lead ad, which has a form pop up, not just content, not just pay-per-click stuff, but run an actual Facebook leads ad. And you have someone fill out a form to get a download. And that download is typically a list of properties, a list of open houses, a list of something they couldn't get from a normal Zillow search. So you do the work, you put together the list, or you populate it on your website. You run an ad. Hey, if you're looking to get this list, which qualified prospects would be looking for, then fill out the form. And they fill out the form. It's an ad you run. They fill out the form, they get the list, you get the phone number, you call them immediately. That has been the best thing going in real estate right now, from a low-cost, self-made lead gen. Again, my YouTube video on lead gen tells you how to do that. And we do that in my private client group. Any last-minute questions? Well, it's been pretty quiet out there today, but I think the content was good, and many of you are probably intending on going back and watching it again. Just make sure that becomes a reality by putting it on your calendar to do so now. I appreciate you guys hanging in, watching this. Hopefully you're scribbling on your calendar a couple of hours now to go back and go through this. If you have trouble and you need a couple of minutes of coaching, you can go on my website, strongholdtraining.com/schedule, okay, and schedule a free 15 minutes with me. If you attended this and you need 15 minutes of my time, listen, I am motivated to see you succeed. What I don't want you to say is I attended a webinar, got a lot of information, and never used it. That's a waste of your time and mine. If 15 minutes of me unhitching you from whatever you're stuck on to move to that next goal is all you need, I will do that for free. I just want to see lives changed. I know this is heavy stuff, This is stuff you're going to have to go back and study and put into practice. This was more of a master's level course today, given to you in an hour and a half. I know that. But go back and do the work. Guys, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Again, 15 minutes free is yours if you go on the site. Otherwise, I will see you guys. Probably my next class, I think, is the open houses class. I'll have to go check the schedule. And I'll see you guys there. And man, I really hope I can see you guys in person again soon. I've got a great sequence of events that I was planning on doing this year that's being held off, it looks like, till possibly even 2021. We have some large all-day workshops where we take stuff like this and you come into a workshop and we do it all day. And I just can't wait till we get back to that. I know you feel the same. So stay healthy, guys. Do what you need to do. Let's get through this COVID mess and let's get back to this. By the way, your strategy is the only thing that needs to change here. COVID, schmovid. Let's change our strategies and not our goals, okay? COVID's just an obstacle. Let's change our strategies. See you guys on the next workshop. Thanks.